Yes, good morning. I am here today with Dr. Funke Afolabi-Brown, who is a board certified pediatric pulmonologist and whose mission is really just to help women achieve better health by optimizing sleep. Dr. Brown, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to talk about this for a couple of reasons. As a lifestyle medicine doctor, I preach sleep hygiene and proper sleep habits as kind of one of the fundamental, like non-negotiable things that we need to improve and organize and optimize prior to really addressing any other health issue or problem like weight loss or high blood pressure or anxiety or depression. None of that will get better unless the quality of our sleep is high. And I know that that is what you specialize in as a sleep medicine specialist and a pediatric pulmonologist. And I just think it's so foundational. And so I'm excited that you are offering this kind of help to women specifically, because in my world, when you're trying to help everybody from a family medicine perspective, and you're trying to address multiple issues, it's hard to dive deep into each one of those issues. And so if there's somebody who needs a specific course or assistance or training or education on optimizing their sleep, I know that we can reach out to somebody like you. So tell me how you kind of fell into this. How did you make this your specialty, and why is it so interesting and important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just say, but you just saying fundamental, that's where you had me. Because I think that's been my mission, like you said, helping people understand that sleep is so critical. It's not a luxury. And, just busy women, professional women, like everything else we do, we put everything on the back burner as we try to meet everyone's needs. And then we're struggling. And most of the time, like you mentioned, like when women have difficulties, either with weight loss, with motivation, energy, or kids, or how they, respond to their kids' tantrums and things like that, most of the time sleep is suffering. And so the way this all came about, right? Like I started off, first of all, for me personally, I'd struggled with sleep and insomnia. And as someone who really am very, very sensitive to sleep deprivation, I could see it right away, right? So I already knew that. And then when I started seeing kids in outpatient, my kids with asthma, breathing issues, or kids that had sleep problems, because I decided to pursue sleep medicine as an additional training, just to get like the real understanding of it. And one of the things every mom would come to say is, I don't even know how I got here to your office, Dr. Brown. Like, I literally don't know how I drove here and I wasn't in a car crash. I'm that exhausted because this kid is not sleeping, right? So the connection was so strong, and I was already seeing the impact. Like you have those 30-minute windows where you're talking. And of course, I have more time because they're coming to see me either for a sleep problem or things like that. So I have a little more time. But I just was so, like, my heartstrings were just being tugged when the moms were talking about how this was impacting them as well. And also because I had experienced it. And I'm like, you know what? I need to help moms out there. And so helping your child will help you sleep better. I know that, but I also want to help women because what then happens is we then get into this chronic sleep deprivation and the cycle and this learned helplessness as women. And your child is already like grown and old and they're putting themselves to bed, but you're still not sleeping. So really trying to work on understanding what's going on and how we can improve that has just been my passion.
It's incredible how you describe the whole family, like sleep disruptance affects and can have this kind of domino effect on the whole family. I think that if we have a certain amount of time in our day and a lot of obligations, our sleep is often the first thing to go, right? We'll just say we'll sleep less. And some people think, oh, well, I can get by on 4 hours or I can get by on 6 hours. And just because you can function and get by on 4 or 6 hours doesn't mean that you're functioning optimally, or that's the amount of sleep that you need. And yet you describe how when you are chronically sleep deprived, getting 4 to 6 hours of sleep, even though that's not what you need, how it affects everything, how it affects how you parent, how you interact with your colleagues or your the people, the relationships that you have in your life. So there is definitely this broad and far-reaching effects of sleep deprivation, acutely and chronically. And I think it's just really interesting how you highlight, it's not just me and how I feel and how I interact when I'm sleep deprived, but how that affects my whole life and all of my relationships and everything around me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a nocturnist, so I am and have been sleep deprived for the last 13 years that I've been working. You say you're going to work all night and then sleep during the day, and that almost never happens because it's daylight and there's dogs barking and people ringing the doorbell. And, so, I mean, that's not a typical situation, but, it just doesn't lend itself to getting a good night's sleep. So I'm already behind the 8 ball, but let's talk about what is required, or what is sleep hygiene, and what does a good sleep environment look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things I just wanted to mention while you were speaking about, most women that I meet will say, listen, my body, I totally am fine with 4 to 6 hours. That's my magic number. I don't know where this recommendation of 7 to 9 hours are coming from. I need 6 hours, I'm fine. And one of the analogies I usually paint is, think about if you forget to plug your phone to charge and you're heading out in the morning, right? So your phone might be at 50%, right? You actually have some charge. But if you're honest with yourself, once you step out the door, you're already you get into the car, you want to plug it in, you go to wherever you're going, you're like, who has a charger? If someone decides to send you some video, you're like, okay, should I watch this right now? Right? You're just trying to conserve that energy on your phone, right? And then maybe you do find somewhere to plug it in and you're like, oh, okay, now I could watch that video, or,
but also when
chat.
You start opening apps and it's great, the more things you add to the battery, to the stress on the battery, it drains it even faster.
It does. So that is exactly. So it's not like your phone was dead, right? You didn't charge it. It wasn't fully charged, but it got by. But think about, all of a sudden you now have a charge. You're like, okay, where's that? I'm going live right now. I'm going on an IG live right now, because you know what I mean?
That's a great analogy.
So that's something I always they just think that's what's happening to us. So we don't even know what good feels like, because we've been at average for so long, and so that's one thing I always say, let's start with. And yes, in terms of sleep hygiene, right? You go online, you Google it. It's 20 things. You're there, you're like, what the heck? Where do I start with? And in fact, I don't even think this is you know what I mean? It's too much.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I really try to help women understand is start with the mindset, start with understanding why sleep is so important. It's not what you do at the end of the day. It's not just a cure for sleepiness. It's literally, I'm rebooting for my mental health, my immune system, getting my brain cleansed, because the G lymphatic system is in place, and that happens during sleep. So I'm not just unplugging or just shutting my mind down. In fact, my brain is working quite hard when I'm sleeping. So understanding that first, and then we sort of then build up from there. So like you mentioned, there are different elements, of sleep hygiene. It's funny. Sleep hygiene is what it is, but for me, it's I don't want you feeling like you're not clean because it's hygiene if you don't sleep well. So maybe healthy sleep habits, but yeah, exactly. Those things are the building block, because for you to say maybe you have insomnia or some other sleep problem, you have to make sure that the foundation is right. So the framework I use are things like consistency. And that is so important, because we have this circadian rhythm that's regulated really by the light and day cycle. And that's why you probably will not feel sleepy naturally when you get home after your night shift and things like that. But that consistency is so important, because that's the way you're cueing your body. And that should not vary too much even on the weekends. So even on the weekends, I know a lot of us want to just sleep in and things like that. But if you're going to sleep in, try to avoid doing more than 2 hours. Otherwise, you have this phenomenon we call social jet lag, where it's you just went to the West Coast and back on the weekend, and really just disrupts your system a lot. And then the other thing is having a routine. We talk about routines for our kids a lot. They have this bath, they read this book, we sing this song, and then we just flop into bed. And then we're wondering why we can't sleep because our minds are still racing. So that is so critical. Like anything you enjoy, just a moment for you. It doesn't have to be like prolonged. If you can incorporate a bath, I think that's beautiful because that does two things. First, it gives you time in the shower alone, hopefully. And then second, it also kind of drops your core body temperature, which is needed for us to actually be able to fall asleep. And so that's a great thing to incorporate in your routine. So whether it's taking a bath, reading a book, or practicing some, gratitude journaling, something like that, just find whatever really helps you relax. And then the third thing I usually will talk about is having an environment that's cool. And the reason why, again, is that core body temperature does need to drop. And that's why you feel uncomfortable when your room is hot. It's hard for you to fall asleep or to stay asleep. So you want to make sure the room is really pretty cool, anywhere from 65 to 72, not cold, but cool, on the cooler side. And then noise free, right? If the radio, the TV, things are on, it's really disruptive for you to sleep. But some people don't like just pure quiet. So you can have a noise machine or a fan or something that's going to be on all night. That's fine. And then darkness is just beautiful for sleep because of the melatonin production at night. So for me, I'm super sensitive to light, such that even if the street light is on and my blackout shades, just the light that comes through the cracks can disrupt my sleep. So I usually use like an eye mask and a sleep mask, and I recommend it for us women as well. And then, technology, that's a big one. That's like a whole episode. We know what it does. We just need to admit it. We know what it does for us. So avoiding using devices anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. One, because again, that blue light suppresses melatonin. And two, because you get excited, angry, you get some kind of emotion when you go either on social media or you listen to the news or you try to send an email. It gives this emotion that does not necessarily promote sleep. And then finally, another thing I recommend is assigning our bed for sleep and sleeping only in bed, because our brains make these associations, and that association is sleep, bed. That's the association we want to make. But then as women, again, our bed becomes our dining room, because we're like, listen, I just want to be in here and eat my popcorn and watch a movie or finish up some work on my computer. And so your brain's just seeking, like, what are we doing in bed today? Are we sleeping? Is it the office hours? Is it a movie theater and things like that? So really trying to limit what we do in bed as, sleep and of course, intimacy and things like that.
You touched on so many important things in that little synopsis. And I think that's so comprehensive and thorough in kind of highlighting all of the most important things that are needed to get a good night's sleep. But as you were talking, I'm thinking to myself about how many people, when I approach this similar kind of framework, kind of similar guidelines for getting good sleep, how many people will say to me, well, I can't sleep unless I, have a glass of wine, unless I, check my phone before I go to bed, unless my child is in bed with me, or my dog is at the foot of the bed, or, they have all these different things that are set up that are working against them, that they have kind of come to rely on, and think that they can't get a good night's sleep without doing these things, when in fact, those things are all interfering with the quality of their sleep. So people building habits or relying on things to help them get to sleep that are actually interfering with their sleep. How do you kind of help people break habits like having a glass of wine before bed to help them go to sleep, or, scrolling social media, which, like you said, no matter how you think it's helping you relax, it's definitely having the opposite effect. The light, the anxiety, the emotions, you're so right about that. But how do you help people start to identify and break those habits that they think are helping them, but are clearly interfering?
Yeah, absolutely. I think exactly what you said. One, it comes from understanding, right? So I have this framework, and it's actually, there's an acronym CREATE that I use. So it kind of goes through all those things. But it seems like, yes, I've had this, it's more or less like sleep crutches. I have my glass of wine and my social, that's my me time. That's what a lot of times what I hear, it's my me time. It's my dog by my feet, my glass of wine, and then, my thumb just going up and up and up, and then that's how I feel better. But again, it all comes back to that mindset. Like, let's be true to yourself. Like, how long does it take you to sleep? Usually it takes time, because then what happens is you're sort of dulling your senses with that with scrolling, and then numbing your senses also with, just the overwhelm, trying to wind down with the alcohol. Now, alcohol in and of itself is sedating. And one of the things that I usually will share with, and we know that even from literature, is that what it does is that it helps you to fall asleep pretty fast. So they get that instant gratification. So it's like, come on, social media doesn't affect me because I sleep right away, because you sedated yourself, right? But the thing about it is, because of the way it's metabolized, one, it deprives us of getting good slow wave sleep. And so within the first half of the night, all of a sudden, you're already done. You've already metabolized it. And then it now you start to get fragmented sleep. So it deprives you of slow wave sleep. And slow wave sleep is a stage of sleep that's so critical when it comes to repair, when it comes to restoration, energy, immune system, and things like that. So fragmenting our slow wave sleep leaves us still depleted when we wake up. And so then what we end up doing is you wake up, and you may wake up with a headache. It may be that headache. It may be with like weird, vivid dreams you're getting as well, because you're cycling through stages of sleep instead of staying in one stage for the appropriate amount of time. And then so you may wake up with a headache or a migraine, and we go to caffeine, right? Because that fixes everything. And then by mid-afternoon, we get a caffeine crash, and then we pick another one because we need it to sustain us. And so then in the evening again, now because we're all caffeinated up, and caffeine has a very long half-life. So if you take caffeine in the evening, and that could be soda, it could be iced tea, it could be anything, it stays in your system. So then what do? We take that wine to wind down again. And so we now have this cycle. And so what I encourage is, let's do one thing at a time. You can't ditch everything, because it's hard, because it may have taken some time to get into this habit. So it may be that, yes, you can have some wind down time. At least I would say, for alcohol, at least maybe 2 or 3 hours before bedtime. If you have to have some, if you want to, of course you shouldn't, hopefully not lunch hour, but I understand the benefits in that for you in terms of winding down. But I think if you can replace it with something else, that would be ideal. But also avoid doing it like close to bedtime. So either pick one thing and start, and note how you feel. And what you can do if we're going to spend time, because yes, we need some adult time. We need to see what people are up to and things. And now social media, it's like a huge community. Setting a time or an alert to say, okay, it's time to put that away and start my bedtime routine, so you can still have those things in place. But I think the timing in relation to our bedtime is really important. Start with one. Don't try to take it all. I think that's the thing. So it's like a child. You're trying to wean them off the breast, wean them off the pacifier. We're doing it gradually. And usually once women are able to do that, it's like, oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. I thought I was sleeping well. Now I'm sleeping well.
Yes. When you get that restorative night's sleep, you're like, holy cow, This is what it should feel like every single day. Yeah. And I totally understand what you're saying about the kind of vicious cycle of I'm sleep deprived, so I rely on caffeine all day long. And then you get to the end of the day and you want to try to relax. So maybe you have a glass of wine with dinner, and then you're back into that kind of disrupted sleep and then sluggish kind of day where you're constantly trying to find your energy. And so many people never get it, no matter how many cups of coffee I drink, some days it's like, it's just not enough. Well, the answer is not caffeine. The answer is getting a better night's sleep. So you bring up a lot. And when you're talking about backing if you're going to have wine, which we know is, has some heart health benefits. And, if you're backing it up, we also often talk about not eating too close to bedtime, or not exercising too close. Anything that revs up your metabolism or increases your energy is something you want to avoid close to bedtime. So if you're going to back up your alcohol, maybe have it with dinner, which is also going to be at least 3 hours before bedtime, and then kind of not make it where after dinner you continue to drink and, to try to get into the habit of trying to get yourself off of that. So backing up your dinner, your alcohol, your exercise, and making sure none of that happens too close to bedtime. Now, we're all busy working, partners, mothers, we have all these things. Like, there's so many hours in the day that a lot of times my daily routine, as I'm sure yours and others who are listening, goes into the night. My daughter has a lacrosse game that's going to finish at 9:00 tonight. So when you're trying to be consistent, and when you're trying to have a routine, there's so many variables that are affecting your ability to achieve that routine. How do you kind of accommodate for variations and things that are disruptive to your routine, like late night sports activities, or, like you said, trying to be consistent all week, and then the weekends are, you go out with friends and stay out late. It's sometimes difficult to keep that routine. How do you adjust for that? Do you make up for it the next day? Do you sleep later? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that is so true, because we don't want to make things so rigid that we lose out on things that give us pleasure, right? Hanging out with girlfriends, going out late, going on a date night, things like that are very important. I think the key is doing the best you can, honestly. For example, if you're going out, is it every single night, every single weekend? I think we may need to set some boundaries there, right? When it comes to sports or after school activities, sometimes making it in such a way that what I see that happens really is, kids get back from after school activities, and then, oh my goodness, we need to prepare for the next day, and there's a lot of anxiety, and they're exhausted, they're tired, they're cranky, they're hungry, everybody, emotions are flying, which is not relaxing for sleep either. I think it's really looking at your schedule, and especially when we have teenagers as well, helping them review their schedule and saying, okay, what are things that we may typically have pushed off to later at night after sports or whatever? What are things we could do before then? How can we strategize in such a way that, as soon as you're done, you still can incorporate a very, very short routine, where you're heading straight into bed, so we don't have all these things, even if you need to take a snack, because of course they're hungry as well. So you would have had dinner, let's do a little light snack or something, and then, I don't know, read for 5 minutes, do something that really helps you just decelerate, and then go to sleep. Again, is really trying to, and if you're noticing that every single day of the week, there's something that's eating into your sleep time, you're doing too much. Yeah. You are doing too much.
That's a hard fact. That's a hard fact for people to accept, because we're all busy and we all have things that we want to accomplish. But sometimes saying no for the sake of your health is, kind of one of the first steps. And that's a hard thing. People don't want to give up their, book club, or their sports, or their church groups, or whatever, whatever's keeping them out and keeping them active. And it's hard to balance, because we want you to have a social life, and those are social interactions are, and sports and athletics and all these things are part of what make you healthy and whole. And yet we're trying to fit in so much.
I know.
That the first thing that's compromised is sleep.
Is sleep. And when we talk about like barriers for women and even for kids in terms of what gets in our way of good sleep, one is it's society, right? Like, I still am not sure why, sports and after school activities have to be so late, when we understand, especially for teenagers, how important sleep is. Now they're robbed of sleep at the beginning of the night, right? Because first they're shifted, so they physiologically they can't go to bed until later, because their circadian rhythm is moved about 2 hours or so. And then there's early school start times, so then they have this short window, and then things like that are happening. So that's one thing. So there's the society, there's obligations, there's boundaries that we as women sometimes struggle with. Like, I don't want to say no. There's this, I want to join this. I want to be part of this or part of that, or have a friend that's really struggling, and you want to be there for people. You want to be there for your family. You want to, do all those things. But then there are just times when we do have to say, listen, if I had an appointment, the same way when I have an appointment with my doctor, I'm not just going to say, oh, sorry, can we start 15 minutes later? No. Set your sleep like that. Set your sleep as an appointment. If you can do that, like, okay, at 10 p.m., I need to be in bed, and then work your way back. If I need to be in bed by 10 p.m., how can I organize my day to make sure that I don't miss my appointment with my bedtime, right? I think we need to start to prioritize sleep that way, because when we do it right, a third of our lives are spent sleeping. Think about it, 8 hours a night, a third. That has never changed. That requirement has not changed. So for us to really be optimal for the 2/3, which is the day, which doesn't seem like a lot of time, if we can focus on prioritizing that 1/3, we'll do better. We'll work faster, sharper, make better executive decisions, have better memory, less fog. And so the work or the things that seem to take longer because you're slogging and running on empty, you're able to do faster when you sleep better.
Your efficiency and your productivity improves. I know for sure when I have a to-do list and I wake up after a good night's sleep, I can blow through it by noon.
Yeah.
But when I'm tired, it's like it just gets put off and put off and put off. And then other things show up, the unexpected things that throw us off our routine are like so much more impactful on a day when you've had poor sleep. When you come across a bump in the road or a change in the plan and you're well rested and you're focused and you're clear, they're smaller. They have a smaller effect on your day than if you're tired and you're like, holy hell, how am I going to deal with this?
Exactly. And your perception of it too, it just feels overwhelming.
Yes. And your mood when you approach it, it's like frustrating and like, and then you get agitated, or then you don't interact the way you want to with your children or your partner or coworkers or your family members, or yourself. You're harder on yourself. You make poor food choices. Maybe you don't cook dinner because you don't have time or energy, and so you order out. So all of it has this kind of like trickle down effect. How do you feel about naps? Because, I mentioned that I'm a nocturnist, and a lot of night shift workers, I hope, will listen to this and kind of, try to start to incorporate some of the things that we're talking about, because night shift work really could be a totally different podcast, but there's a lot of intrinsic struggle with getting regulated, high quality sleep when you're a night shift worker. But there's a lot of times when I'm on the night shift where I sleep in segments. So I will sleep, 4 hours here and 4 hours there. And I know that a lot of people kind of in a modified version of that will get a reduced amount of sleep at night and then will take a nap during the day to kind of try to make up for that. How do you feel about splitting your sleep into, a nighttime segment and then a restorative nap during the daytime? Is it helpful, or does it interfere and make the situation worse?
So I love naps. I think naps, like you said, are restorative, and it's part of my self-care, like on Sundays and things like that. So it depends on what the goal is. Absolutely. As shift work, I recommend it as part of sort of your preparation for your shift. I think it's so critical because, there's so many adverse effects of sleep deprivation, specifically in shift workers. And, there's like a whole ICSD code for shift work disorders, right? So sleep disorders. So it's very important to get as much as you can when you can, but be very strategic about it. Yeah. So specifically what I recommend for shift work, I'll just mention that and then we'll talk about the naps piece. Before the shift, what I recommend is, yes, sleep before your shift starts, right? If you have a night shift, take that nap before as much as you can, and caffeine, and expose yourself to bright light, because now you're working completely opposite to what everybody else is doing, which is going to bed, right? And then for the first half of your shift, when you're at work, let that light just shine because you want to suppress that melatonin. About halfway to the end of your shift, start to dim the lights, start to avoid the very bright lights.
Okay.
And when you're done with your shift, go home. Don't go to the grocery store.
Okay.
Just go straight home. And on your way home, just wear like the ugliest, biggest sunglasses. It doesn't matter, because now you're trying to do the direct opposite, right? You're trying to now get that melatonin up in some way or form. So avoid any form of light. Let those goggles go, right? And then drive home or take Uber. Please do not drive sleepy. As soon as you get home, now this is where you need to just ask for help from your community, from your family. This is very critical, because why? You want to try to get as much sleep as you can. Have a routine once you get home. So take a warm bath again, get that do not disturb sign on the door, have those blackout shades on. You may need to take melatonin because, now you're working completely against your circadian rhythm. So you can take some melatonin, that would help. Get earplugs on or noise canceling headphones, something, and just try to, and if you need a noise machine, especially if there's going to be ambient noise, get a noise machine as well, and just sleep for as long as you can. Make sure your room is nice and cool. So you'll do that. When you wake up, maybe it may be 4 hours and you're done. Try to take a nap again, because you need that. It's so important. So that's usually what I would recommend for shift work. Now, for us, in terms of naps, again, naps are very restorative. Short naps during the day. If you're going to sleep at night, if your plan is to sleep at night, you want to make sure your nap is not too long. Anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes is perfect.
Okay.
It's a power nap. The reason why is, again, we have different stages of sleep. We have non-REM sleep, which is our slow wave deep, which comprises of, light sleep and our slow wave deep sleep. And then we have our REM or REM sleep, which is really our dream sleep. Now, if you go through each sleep cycle, right, each sleep cycle is about 90 minutes or so. If you go into that deep, like close to REM sleep, you start to develop what you call sleep inertia. And I'm sure you felt it when you oversleep, you're like, oh, I feel worse. So that's that sleep inertia. But if you make that nap short, where you get that restoration, that little boost, it's perfect. And then you want to avoid taking naps too late in the day. So if you nap after about 2 p.m. or so, the likelihood that you'll be able to fall asleep at night is shorter. And the reason why is, when we wake up in the morning, over the course of the day, we build sleep pressure. So that's a way that sleep is regulated, our sleep pressure and our circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm helps you to stay awake during the day and fall asleep at night. But that sleep pressure starts to build over the course of the day. So in the morning, you don't owe anybody sleep. You don't have any sleep there, which is why it's hard to, if you and I want to take a nap now after a good night of sleep, it's going to be hard. We don't have any sleep debt. So you accrue sleep debt over the day. When you take a nap, you're dropping that debt a little bit. So you don't want to drop too much of it, because if you do, then you just don't have enough sleep pressure to sleep at night. So take a nap, keep it short, and do it like earlier in the day, like around noon or so, and then sleep better at night.
You talk about a 20 to 30 minute nap, which sounds great. It sounds like it would be a highly effective way to just get a quick burst of sleep in there. But it brings me to the question of being able to fall asleep within that short amount of time, not only during the day when you're napping, but in the evening when you're trying to go to sleep. So, if I were to try to lay down at 2:00 and say, I'm going to take a 30-minute power nap, it's going to take me 30 minutes to fall asleep, and then the same thing happens at night. So if that happens, number one, should you abandon the nap? If you can't fall asleep to get a good 20, 30, 40 minutes in there, do you abandon the nap and just lay there and rest? And then also at night, if you're having difficulty falling asleep, what's the best way to go about it? Continue to lay there, get up and walk around. What is the cure for having a difficulty initiating sleep, whether it's nap time or bedtime?
Yeah, that's great. So a couple of things. We have this, what you call our, circadian nadir. So that's when we sort of feel really super, super sleepy. That happens at night, which is why you're able to sleep at night, right? And then sometime during the day, and in European countries, they have this siesta. It's, it's not like, people used to think it's just like, oh, my belly is full, that's why I'm sleeping. No, actually, it's it doesn't just happen after a full meal, right? It's something that your body is undergoing. So you do have that lull, that period of sleepiness. So if you can capture it at the right time, you should be able to fall asleep. If you can't, then you're not sleepy. Don't even bother. Don't sweat it. Now, if you now start to feel sleepy at like 4 p.m., just do not do it. Do not do it. Just push through. Just push through. Yes. Okay. Now, especially if you're someone who has, the other thing I should have mentioned, if you're someone who has a hard time falling asleep at night, you probably don't want to nap at all during the day until you fix that problem.
Okay.
Because you want to now move as much of your sleep pressure to nighttime as possible. Okay. Women experience this a lot where they can't sleep, with difficulty initiating sleep. And that's actually one of the criteria for insomnia, chronic insomnia, acute insomnia, is that difficulty falling asleep. A lot of us, again, women, is because we have too much on our plate. Yeah. Too much on our plate that's just in our brains, and our brains are running a marathon. And especially if you're a professional, if you're an entrepreneur, it's like all those creative juices, like they just they come up at night. What I recommend, that's why I think it's very important to incorporate some kind of either journaling or mindfulness, or just a period of like gratitude. Be thankful for what you did even if you didn't feel like you did much. Don't be hard on yourself. So really working on those pieces is really important. If you do have a lot of things that are going on in your brain, in your mind, before bed, that's the time to write it down. Again, put it down. What did you get done? What did you not get? What was not able to be done? What are the things you need to do? Because it's like the grocery list. I need to email the teacher. Like all those things, just write it down so that you're taking it from your mind, you're putting it on paper, and you'll be able to address it. So I think that's really important. It's almost like you're scanning yourself. Why am I not sleeping? Where is it? Is it in my head? Most of the time it is. What do I need to do? Yeah. Get it out, get it on paper. It's safe there. You will not forget. It's almost like a filing cabinet. You open a little and all the papers keep flying out. But if you put it on paper, it's there. You're going to address it. Don't worry. So you reassure yourself. Then keep scanning down. Am I uncomfortable? Is it hot? Remember, your temperature should drop. So if it's too warm, take it down. If you have heavy beddings on, peel some off. Look again, am I in pain? Is there anything? Is there too much light? That's where the mask is. So you do those practical things again, just kind of scan your body, scan your environment. If you took caffeine, just make a note to yourself, you're not going to take caffeine too late in the day. You know what I mean? Now, if you've been in bed and now you're at the point where you're like, oh my gosh, it's been more than 30 minutes. I feel like I can't sleep. This is stressful. Sleep is so important. I'm supposed to prioritize sleep. Sleep is critical to my wellness and my emotional. Get out of bed. Stop. Just don't bother trying anymore. Sleep is not something we should work hard to do. So when you start trying too hard, it's time to just stop trying, because what is now happening is that your brain has started making those associations again, where we said, sleep is not the bed is not our theater. The bed is not our dining room. The bed is not our worry place either. The bed is not a place where we should feel stressed out, right? So it's no longer a place where you feel safe. So get out of bed. Find somewhere, either you sit in a chair somewhere in your room or somewhere else, just to detach for a bit. And, what will you do? Don't go back on your phone. No. Find something like ridiculously boring to do. Either you want to do some breathing, you want to do some reflecting, you want to do some more writing, or you want to read like a very old, boring magazine, newspaper, whatever, a book that's not going to suck you in, right? So essentially, you're trying to just break that stress response, right? Yeah. And then once you start feeling sleepy again, go back into bed. And that will come. It will come. And then also reassure yourself, a lot of this is mindset. Like, your day is not going to be catastrophic if you missed a good night of sleep here and there. You will function. It may be hard, you will function, but the next day is going to be better. Why? Because now you have a ton of sleep pressure to sleep better.
I love that you use the term sleep pressure. And as you were talking, I was thinking about a toddler, how when you're trying to get a baby to wean off that, to sleep better at night, you try to wean them off those naps during the day.
Yeah.
No, just keep them up, run them around, make them exhausted, Like, little do we know that as soon enough, when you go to get older, you're going to be running so hard that you're just going to fall dead when you get to bed.
Exactly.
So it's funny, like even as an adult, you're trying to delay that sleep pressure so that you're not, so that it does come at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about sleep aids? You mentioned melatonin for night shift workers, and I rely on melatonin when I'm having fragmented or disrupted sleep, or I know that I'm going to have a hard time falling asleep. But a lot of people rely on sleep aids. A lot of people rely on medications that are not really intended for sleep.
Yeah,
they use them for sleep, like benzos, like Xanax or Klonopin, which, let me clarify, can be indicated for some sleep disorders. But are not sleep medicines. So how do you feel about sleep aids like Benadryl, melatonin, and then the other class like Ambien, Lunesta, and finally the benzos like Xanax and Klonopin?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the key is stepping back to say, why do we need it, right? And again, I think that's what's just heartbreaking, right? You go to your primary care physician, they're like, doc, I can't sleep. Okay, here's a script, right? We're not digging deep. Is that not heartbreaking? It breaks my heart. It's like, what are we doing? Let's fix this pill. And then what happens is you'll use it for 3 months. Doc, it's not working. Okay, let's give you a horse pill now, and more and more and more and more. And you develop tolerance, but without really addressing the fundamental problem. What is it? Is it insomnia? Is it restless legs? Is it anxiety? Is it depression? Is it a primary sleep disorder? Like, we have to try to address those things. There is a place for sleep medications in some situations, but actually the AASM, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, recommends for women that have, and everyone that has insomnia, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. It's super duper effective to treat insomnia. Even in the studies that they did, right? They did CBTI and medication. CBTI trumped in some situations. CBTI plus medication was very, very helpful too. The good thing about CBTI, it's all just a lot of work with cognitive restructuring, behavioral strategies, a lot of what we've talked about right now, a lot of work on a psychoeducation on the importance of sleep and how to prioritize it and sleep, stuff like that. But it is so fundamental because we will have seasons in our lives where we feel overwhelmed, we feel exhausted, but you can go back to those strategies, unlike meds where it's like you just never know, it's hit or miss. Okay, that's one. So really trying to figure out what the reason is. Now, if you do need some sleep aid, I feel very comfortable about melatonin, again, because it's a hormone that your body produces. Now, the problem with use of melatonin in the US is it's so unregulated, right? It's marketed as a supplement. So you have no clue, right? It says 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams of melatonin. Yes. It could be 0.5 milligrams in that bottle. It could be 30 milligrams in that bottle. It's crazy. They've done studies looking at this. So you just have to be aware of that. And then when it comes to, a lot of the, Ambien, Lunesta, all those medications, again, some of them have side effects. Some of them have issues like sleepwalking. I heard of a woman who showed up in a random person's house and was folding their laundry and the cops came.
I wouldn't mind that, I don't think.
And it was
my laundry, please.
Her dog had to, like, that was how she got out. Like, no, it's a side effect. So they all have. So, and then the issue with them is, okay, what's the long-term plan? Are we going to be on this medication for forever? If you have acute, like, brief episodes where you need medication, I think it's okay. But you just have to still try to say, why do I need it? Yeah. Why is this just something, is this like a Band-Aid? How do we address the underlying issue? Some natural supplements, magnesium, some people talk about use of essential oils and things like that. I think we don't have enough in the literature to say, yes, this is like particularly effective, but there's been reports that it really improves. And a lot of them are just like natural. So I am definitely up for that.
Yeah. You mentioned the becoming tolerant or developing a tolerance to medication, meaning that take a certain amount, and then after a while that doesn't work anymore, and so you need to take more and more and more as your body gets used to it. And tolerance leads to addiction. And what happens then when you don't have it or you don't take it, especially in those higher classes of medications, the more dangerous and more highly addictive classes like the benzos, which if you don't have or don't take, your body will certainly feel it in many ways other than just not being able to sleep. And so, if you're somebody who's been prescribed a benzo for sleep, and you're, reliant on it for many years, coming off of that can be really difficult and really dangerous. So these are not medicines to take lightly, which is why, like you, I love the idea of hey, listen, I don't care if it's not recommended or not, we don't have a ton of evidence. If lavender helps you sleep, then use the freaking lavender, There are some other things that aren't FDA recommended or prescribed, like you were saying, magnesium, the tryptophan from warm milk. These are things that anecdotally, are worth a shot because they're not going to be harmful to you. They're gonna be helpful if anything. When you mentioned taking a bath, I always think I don't do a bath without Epsom salts. I have lavender Epsom salts, which Epsom salts contain magnesium, and add the lavender, add the warm bath, and you've got this perfect prescription for a sleep-inducing environment, right? Yeah. So, the more of those non-medication things you do, the better, the less chance that you'll be desperately searching for a pill to take, like a Benadryl or, an Ambien or Lunesta. And you mentioned the side effects. There are some people who, want to take a medication, but can't because, and qualify for, really do need it based on their medical condition, but can't take them because of side effects and things like that, especially like the antihistamines. A lot of people use Benadryl for sleep, and, they have a lot of side effects, especially the older you get, side effects related to dry mouth or urinary retention or things like, things that you don't want. There are other ways to try to get a good night's sleep as opposed to taking some of those medications, which can have side effects. Oh my God, there's so much good stuff in here. There's so many helpful, things that you don't even think of. People think that sleep is an innate. We should all intrinsically be able to fall asleep and get a good night's sleep. They think it's a normal part of being human and that we all should just automatically be good at it. When in fact, it really is, especially in the technological and industrial age, it really is a learned skill. It's something that we have to pay attention to, and we have to really make time for and make space to address. You talked about journaling. I have a lot of people tell me I want to be healthier. I want to have a better mindset. And now you're telling me I have to find additional time to journal or additional time to, meditate, whatever. Combining that with your sleep routine is a great way to do it. Like you mentioned, you're going to have a sleep routine. You need to journal. You may as well use those two things together in the bath with the melatonin and the magnesium.
I love it.
I know. One last thing I wanted to just touch on is exercise, because we talked about not exercising too close to bedtime, but we know that people who exercise get a better night's sleep than those who don't. So can you tell me a little bit about how those are related and when would be the best time to add exercise into your routine if you want to get a better night's sleep?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So exercise is so critical. What it's actually been shown that it helps also increase your slow wave sleep, right? That deep restorative sleep. So by all means, let's incorporate exercise, right? I think, and then, it helps with our mood, it helps with emotion regulation. And of course, it helps us with, in addition to other healthy strategies to lose weight too. So very beneficial. I think the thing about it is, in addition to all those things, when we exercise, right, you feel hot, your heart rate is up because of that adrenaline. And so all those things, two things we really, really need for good sleep is a sort of like a drop in our heart rate, right? That just the calming down of our sympathetic system. And also we need our core body temperature to go down. So you're doing the direct opposite with exercise. So if you will, by all means, do fit that exercise in, but you want to avoid rigorous exercise about 2 hours before bedtime. Okay. So that's not when you want to do like a quick, like 3K or something, So if you want to go on a walk, mild to moderate exercise, that's fine. You can still do that. And so really avoiding it about 2 hours before bedtime is helpful. Now, if you look at your schedule and you're like, listen, there's nowhere else to fit it other than within those 2 hours, I would rather you just do it. Exercise, please. So let's not use
exercise. Like it's gonna ruin my sleep.
I gotta sleep. I can't do it. Let's not use sleep as an excuse not to exercise. So if that's the only place you can fit it in, try to fit it in still. I would rather you do that. Maybe nothing too intense, not like a full cardio workout, but try to fit it in as best as possible.
Yeah.
So yes,
better than nothing. Or maybe even you can do something like a yoga or Pilates, that's gentle and more of a stretching as opposed to like something that's intensely cardio. Yeah. It sounds to me like you're saying, I know about that being a morning person is kind of like what everybody thinks. I'm never going to be a morning person. I've tried, I promise. It sounds like, morning would be an ideal time to exercise. You're taking advantage of that early morning cortisol spike.
Yes.
You're going to, kind of get your heart rate going, get your temperature up and get yourself ready for the day. And then you fit it in, you've expended the energy, and that's going to contribute to your sleep pressure later in the day. It's going to
absolutely. Absolutely. And you could fit it in. The other benefit is especially if you go out, if you go for a walk in the morning or a brisk walk or run, guess what? The light, it helps you as well, right? With regulating that circadian rhythm. So many benefits doing it earlier, but by all means, fit it in somehow.
Yeah. When I see patients coming to me to optimize their lifestyle, whether they have complaints or they're just kind of wanting to be healthier, wanting to be more effective with their health routine. One of the things that we talk about is kind of making sure first and foremost that they don't have any medical issues, medical problems that are causing their symptoms. Or of course, if they don't have any symptoms, we're screening for medical problems with like a routine physical exam and blood work. So if someone is listening and struggling with sleep and they're saying, yes, I identify with all of this, can you just give us a couple of warning signs or things that might signal that this is an intrinsic sleep disorder and not just lack of routine or too much on our plate? What are some warning signs that you might actually have a medical condition that requires an evaluation and treatment by a physician?
That's perfect. I love it. So broad categories of sleep problems that women have, I think everyone. Yeah. So the first one of the most common is insomnia.
Okay.
So now this is like, you've done everything in that sense, but like you said, I'm waking up, I'm having a very hard time falling asleep. I've put the phone down. Yeah. I've tried journaling, but I'm still in bed. I'm tossing and turning and sleep is not coming. I'm not sure what to do. Or you're waking up in the middle of the night for prolonged stretches of time. This is not just like, oh my goodness, I have some deadlines to meet and I feel stressed. This is like, it's been going on for about 3 months or so and I need help. Or I'm waking up super duper early in the morning, still like I do need sleep. I'm exhausted. So it's not like, oh, I'm done sleeping. I just cannot shut my mind off. I can't sleep. So that's insomnia. That's a huge, very, very common issue with women. So if that's one thing. Number two is if you are sleeping well, you're getting your recommended hours of sleep, say like 7 to 9 hours or whatever, but you're waking up still exhausted. Like your sleep is not refreshing. And this is not necessarily because you've had caffeine or alcohol or some of the things we talked about. You're still feeling like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Or you're sleeping 10 hours or more and you're still exhausted. That's another one. Or of course, if you have snoring, I think people think, oh, please, it's just annoying. It's a health risk. It's huge because it might be a sign that you have sleep apnea. And that's something that's treatable. That can impact, it causes increased risk of cardiac events, of, hypertension, stroke, so many issues. So if you have sleep apnea, snoring is usually a very common sign that you do. And then finally, if you're extremely sleepy during the day, where even if you're caffeined up, you can barely stand upright, that's something also that you do want to call attention to because it might be a sign of narcolepsy. So those are some broad categories. So prolonged difficulty with sleeping, excessive sleeping, snoring, and non-restorative sleep.
You've given us so much helpful information. You've reminded us that not only is sleep important for optimizing your function, your productivity, your efficiency, your mood, your energy, but it's also it also is potentially, could prolong your longevity, improve your quality of life, and how long you live. I mean, this is a really, really critical, we use the word foundational or fundamental component of health that people should prioritize and definitely get in check before you address anything else. I want my friends who are listening to be able to find you so they can continue to learn more from you or work with you. Please, Restful Sleep MD, Dr. Funke Afolabi-Brown, tell us where we can find you online or in person.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram as Restful Sleep MD, as well as Facebook. That's a good place. I hang out when I can. And then on my website, restfulsleepmd.com, I also work one-on-one with women, busy professional women trying to fit it all in, and their sleep is suffering, to sort of strategize and help you figure out how you can prioritize sleep. A lot of what we do is around boundaries. Yeah. So that's definitely somewhere to find me. And then also, if you have teenagers that are not sleeping, it turns out that's a huge population. That's, sometimes they're the ones that are keeping us up awake at night. And so I have a sleep course specifically for teens. Also, you'll find on my website.
Well, I think that every one of you who are listening should find Dr. Brown, pay attention to what she's saying, learn from her, work with her. She is brilliant. She is beautiful. And she's providing one of the most critical services that we have out there. Dr. Brown, thank you for being here with me and for sharing all of your wisdom and experience and knowledge. And I hope that we can do it again soon. You've been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.